Why should we teach the Bible chronologically? In this video, I'm going to explain what chronological Bible teaching is, why it's important, and how it works. So first of all, what is chron? Well, chron is an approach to the Bible that uses progressive revelation to teach truth over time. It presents the historical events of the Bible in a chronological style that goes from creation to Christ to give our audience an overall and connected view of the message of the Bible. Now, chron views the Bible as one connected narrative from beginning to the end, and we teach that narrative using stories rather than teaching abstract theology that is based on isolated doctrines. Now, who came up with the idea of chron? Well, the guy who developed the course was a missionary in Papua New Guinea named Trevor McIlvaine, who struggled for years trying to get the tribes to understand what the message of the Bible was using our Western style of teaching, which focuses on isolated doctrines. After years of teaching, his people still didn't understand who God was, what the message of the Bible really was, and most importantly, what the gospel was. And so Trevor completely changed his style of teaching to the chronological approach of teaching from creation to Christ using stories. So let's look at a few things that Trevor says in his course to help us understand what chronological teaching is all about and what it aims to solve. Now, he says the majority of Christian teaching emphasizes individual doctrines of the Bible rather than presenting the Bible as one complete interdependent revelation of God. Heresies, misinterpretation, overemphasis of certain scriptures, and denominationalism can in most cases be traced to this lack of chronological and panoramic Bible teaching. After many years of listening to non-sequential, topical, doctrinal sermons, most of which are based on isolated texts, many church members still do not know the Bible as one book. Often repeated verses and some doctrines may be known, but the scriptures according to a divinely given historical structure are seldom understood. So Trevor's point is that the scriptures have a divinely given historical structure, and chronological teaching aims to find that structure and follow it from beginning to the end so that our audience can get the overall message of what the Bible is trying to communicate. Now, this is my favorite way of illustrating the difference between topical teaching and chronological teaching. Now, imagine somebody were to give you a rope. Now, it's a nice and sturdy rope, and it's a good rope, but the only problem is he doesn't take care when he gives it to you, and in the process it gets all tangled. The rope is practically useless to you because even though you can see the two ends sticking out, everything in between is such a tangled mess that it's almost impossible for you to use it. You'd have to untangle it first. Now, I'd say that this is a pretty good illustration of what people's understanding of the scripture is like when we try to teach them in our Western style of teaching the Bible based on isolated doctrines, which is how we're used to hearing it. So first of all, it's non-sequential, meaning that they can't see any real order in the events that you're telling them about. It's random, meaning that even though you tell them many different parts of the story, they can't see how they connect together, and they definitely can't see where the story is going. And in the end, they end up being confused about what the overall message of the Bible is. Now, let's say, for example, somebody else gave you that same rope, but this time he takes care to make sure that it doesn't get tangled in the process. And so he carefully unrolls it for you so that you can tell where the one end starts, and it's all one neatly organized rope from start to finish. And so that's what we mean when we talk about progressive revelation. That means that we start at the beginning of the Bible, and we're careful not to allow the information to get confusing and disorganized in the minds of our people. So starting at the beginning, we go all the way to the end so that our audience has an overall connected view of what the message of the Bible is. That, first of all, it's sequential, meaning they can see that there is an order to the events of the Bible. It has design, meaning they can see how all the different parts fit together. And at the end of the day, it's understood. In other words, they can understand what the overall message of the Bible is, what God was trying to communicate when He wrote the Bible. Now, let's talk about something that we call the cultural onion. Now, when we talk about chron, it's usually in the context of teaching the Bible to people from another culture. Just like an onion has multiple layers, cultures have many layers. On the outer layer, you have what we call behaviors. Those are the things that you can observe or study in a member from another culture. So in other words, the things that he does, so his customs, his habits, and his language. Now, beneath behaviors is another layer called values. Every person has a set of values that dictate his behaviors. But even beneath values, you have beliefs. So every person has a complete set of beliefs that forms his values, which in turn determines how he acts. Now, the reason why we're talking about this is because a lot of Christian teaching focuses on these outer three layers, trying to change behavior, values, and beliefs. But at the center of all of that is what we call the worldview. That means the lens through which each person sees the world. It's the criteria by which he processes information. Now, unfortunately, a lot of times our Bible teaching doesn't reach the worldview, doesn't change the worldview, because we focus so much on those outer three layers. But the Bible does not concern itself so much with changing behaviors or trying to change a person's values or his beliefs. Instead, the Bible offers us a worldview. That is, the lens through which we can see God, the world, and ourselves according to truth. And this is our goal when we're teaching the Bible cross-culturally. We want the Bible to become the foundation on which they rest all of their beliefs, their values, and their behaviors. Now, the only way to do that is to actually teach the Bible in the way that God wrote it. Otherwise, your audience is not going to get the message that God was trying to communicate. So let's talk about how Chron works. Now, like we said, Chron views the Bible as one connected narrative. Within that narrative, there are many stories. And so that's how we teach the narrative of the Bible, is using the stories. Now, we don't view the stories as being random or having a wide range of meaning. Instead, we view the stories as having very defined meanings. In other words, like a puzzle, all the pieces have to fit together in order for the big picture to be seen. Likewise, all of the individual stories of the Bible have to be put in their proper place so that our audience can see the big picture of what God is trying to communicate in the Bible. So when we're doing chronological Bible teaching, we're taking all of those stories, putting them in their right place chronologically so that people can see the big picture of who God is. And therefore, it's actually something that forms a worldview for them. All right, one more illustration to help you understand the difference between chronological teaching and topical teaching. The picture you're looking at right now is actually a web page, but it is the source text or the code that forms the content of the web page. Now, every web page has to have this. This is the kind of stuff that programmers do when they write computer code, or web code as they call it. For most of us, this is just a bunch of confusing text, because we don't understand the language. This is basically what it's like for people from other cultures when we try to communicate the message of the Bible using our Western style of communicating that we are used to. But this, on the other hand, is the content that the code on the previous slide represents. This is something that all of us can grasp. It's something that we can comprehend and form an opinion about. And this is what chronological Bible teaching aims to do, is to communicate the truths of the Bible in a form that people can grasp and understand, so that their understanding of the message doesn't have to depend on the meanings of words, which to most people is confusing. They don't understand or process information that way. So I hope that this has helped you to understand basically what Chron is all about, why it's important, and how it's different from other methods in teaching the Bible cross-culturally, and the basics of how it works. Now, if you're interested in learning more, be sure to watch my next video on how you can teach chronological Bible yourself. Thank you very much.